Recording in progress.
So if that becomes a very viable alternative, then certainly we would want to look at that.
Right. And then I think in my final point would be, I don't think we should lead ourselves to believe that a pedestrian bridge would be any less costly.
Recording in progress.
So if that becomes a very viable alternative, then certainly we would want to look at that.
Right. And then I think in my final, there's different matters to consider when you're building a very long pedestrian accessible bridge. So it wouldn't be about saving costs. It would be about just something that might be more meaningful. I don't know. That's all.
Well, we do have the kids bridge as a great example. Marcia, go ahead.
I think that, one of the things that we need to consider is traffic patterns, how many people are actually using that bridge instead of coming into town. So that goes to energy usage, and it goes to, what's happening in the congested center of Norwich. So I guess my question is, what is it? Stantec's anticipating some sort of public facing presentation. I'm just wondering, when do you foresee a decision-making process by the board? Or maybe that's a Brendan question.
So this is really our chance to kind of weigh in on alternatives and a discussion. I think in the scope of work that was proposed by Stantec, this is our public engagement with them. It's being part of that. I mean, we could certainly have individual discussions at the town level, but again, this is really the first step. I think is to allow Stantec to kind of talk about what they've found to date, what their options are that they propose. We have 4 of those to consider and have a chance to find out if there are other options that we would like to have them explore before we get a final report. And again, I think that would hopefully be before the end of the year.
I did have a question on this. On 4.2, the membrane replacement with repaving, there's a $65,000 structure cost anticipated. What structure is being referred to there?
That's just where we're keeping track of the cost for the membrane and pavement. So anything that's an alteration to the structure is just getting put in that little bucket. Of breaking down the costs. And I didn't share the cost matrix with everyone here, so I think I could do that if you'd like, or we could.
It was in our packet, so I think that's fine. People can refer to what was in the packet. I'm not sure you had another question, Tom?
Well, I guess if we're seeking input from the board about our preference, I guess my preference is to not have ongoing maintenance. I'd like to see that the problem go away, which would mean the expensive option, I'm afraid.
Just pointing out that the problem would go away if we tear it down too. How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess I'd like to know how many people are using it, to go from Beaver Meadow to, over to Beaver Meadow from, what's the road? Turnpike, right?
Yeah.
Over to Sharon and stuff. How much are we burdening town with added traffic if we do that?
I think a lot of people use that as a shortcut to go to the transfer station, which would be a huge part of the traffic on that bridge.
Yeah.
Which would put people going all the way into the Norwich Inn, going north on Main Street, and then going back out Turnpike. If that were eliminated, it certainly would add distance and time to the travel. But we shouldn't make that the overarching reason to make a decision. There we go.
Another thought, just thinking about cost of replacement with the concrete bridge deck. If, the cost is going to be daunting, if we couldn't sort of line that up with a grant or something like that, would we want to do the membrane for a year and try to seek funding to do the more thorough replacement, something like that, like a phased thing? But ultimately, I do think replacing the concrete deck would be my preference. But if I'm a reasonable way to do that, or if it didn't mean that some other bridge was not going to be able to be replaced, but where it's very urgent somewhere else in town.
So is the emulsion in the timbers that cross the bridge, the structural timbers, and so it's leaching out of those because it was applied to the top of them? Is that what's happening?
That's correct.
So
That's
if we put
correct.
membrane down, we're putting it on top of those timbers, and so the emulsion is still in the timbers and still has the potential to leach into the brook.
Yes, the benefit of the membrane is, you're still going to have the emulsion soaked into those timbers that are below the membrane, but you're trying to cut the water off and prevent the water from getting down and making the emulsion move. That's what's happening right now. And there's two reasons the emulsion moves. It moves like it gets runny on really hot days. So it will start to drip and move just like tar does. And then it also, when it gets heavily saturated with water, that water dilutes a little bit of the tar, and it also moves in that instance. So if we can eliminate the water piece of it, the emulsion's still there as a contaminant, but it should be less mobile. And it's much easier for the containment to do its job. I just one thing to add regarding a phased approach. If you're considering replacing the bridge deck at a cost of $700,000, it would be more cost effective to just do the maintenance for a few years, and before you jump into doing the bridge deck, not do the membrane and then come back and do the bridge deck. The membrane is a pretty significant capital expense. And so you would spend less money if you were going to go a few years before you did the replacement, just maintaining what's out there.
Okay, thank you. Marshall?
Tom, doesn't that assume that the cost of the bridge is not going to go up? I mean, I think
All
there's so
of
many-
these costs are in today's dollars. That we're not trying to account for any inflation or time value of money here. I think that's beyond the scope of this a little bit, but that's true. That the longer you wait, then costs go up on anything. So.
Right, Roger, just a second. I'll get to Priscilla's hand up first.
I think I'm not the only person in town who's kind of tired of patching this problem and knowing it's not going to be a long-term solution. We've kind of done that for a long time. So personally, I'm in favor of either replacing with a concrete deck or just getting rid of the bridge. But I had this idea that before anything was decided, we were going to have one or two public meetings specifically to hear from residents of the town what they want, which I think would be more appropriate than just the five of us determining what should happen.
Well, no, we've said that we're going to have a public comment period tonight to hear from residents after they've had a chance to see this proposal.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how many more meetings we would devote to discussing this. Certainly the board has to make a decision, but getting public input is important.
Okay, I just had this idea there was going to be a whole separate thing. It wasn't a select board meeting. It was people can come and talk about it. No, I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't remember.
Sorry, Peter.
Presenting it in that manner.
Okay.
Okay, Roger, you had a comment?
Well, my question was in terms of phasing, don't you have to don't you have to divest before you create? Wouldn't you just don't you have to take the bridge down even if we wanted to build a new one to replace it? So you could foreseeably take the bridge down, do some version of that divestment plan, and then put it up at a subsequent date.
Right, but if you look at the
Agreed.
proposals-
Those aren't exclusive.
Right.
It says removing of the structure is $70,000, whether you replace the bridge deck or not. But on the bridge divestment, you have these associated costs of prepping the area on both ends of the bridge in order to create cul-de-sacs. And I think Tom was saying you have to raise up the bridge abutments to a certain level. So there's other costs associated with that.
Sure, but I guess my point is, since it is politically impossible to carry on with the current system, and we think it is not cost effective to do the repavement while we wait for a new superstructure, I am instead asking, what if we did divest and then do the superstructure? So it's just another idea.
Right, from what I can see here, Roger, it looks like we would spend 170 or thereabouts to divest. If we did it now, if replaced it now, would be 700,000. You would only be eliminating the $70,000 cost for removal of the actual bridge deck. So then that 700,000 would become 630, which you add to the 170. Now you're at $800,000 all in.
Right. As opposed, but if you did the paving project, then where are you at for that, right? So I was just raising the point in the context of, it seemed like the paving was gaining, as an idea, was gaining some traction, right? So I was just pointing out that paving may be very equal to divestment, and then you might actually really hear from people a little bit about the traffic patterns and whether or not they like fossil fuels and vehicle traffic, or if they like, bike ped, right? So it would be more of a planning exercise while also taking care of our duty to deal with the emulsion. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think exploring the idea of a pedestrian bridge hasn't been considered thus far. I agree with the statements that, and if you took the bridge out and put in a dedicated pedestrian bridge, it will be a little bit less expensive than alternative 4.3, but not substantially less expensive than that.
Right.
So just so you understand that. And as far as the use goes, right now it is a fairly friendly pedestrian and bike facility. So I wouldn't see that generating more traffic if you had a dedicated pedestrian facility in there. So you probably have a better sense of it if you went out there on a summertime and you counted how many bikes and pedestrians are using it, then whether or not it would be a good asset to utilize that way. And that's, you could also do other studies. You could look at origins and destinations of pedestrians and think about, from a planning standpoint, how this is going to fit into other network pieces that aren't developed yet.
Right.
Obviously, all that's beyond our scope for this project, but just to give you some ideas, like you probably could figure out the answer just by talking to folks in town about what the asset.
Anecdata from the scientist. Okay.
Okay. Any other board questions or comments? Marcia?
I'd like to hear what Chris says about other bridges. Chris Kaufman?
Yeah, his hand was up and then it went down because we were, Chris, are you still with us? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to just add, there was a traffic count done in 2021, the average daily traffic count, which I believe was about somewhere between 380 to 400 cars per day use that. That's the average daily traffic count of 2021.
Cool.
Okay.
So just for your and Beaver Meadows was somewhere around 2,200. Just gives you a little perspective.
Yeah.
And that's just vehicles. That's not bicycles and such. So, and I think you had asked me a question about other structures. We did, Stantec actually did put a bridge management report together, and some of our capital costs for our bridge designated fund has been developed based on addressing maintenance on bridges, replacement of bridges, I believe. We have a bridge that we are planning to redo. I believe it's Mitchell Brook, is the next one in several years down the line. Some of these have to do with the timing of receiving a structural grant, so we try to time them because we only get that structural grant typically every 2 to 3 years. So we try to time our projects, our big projects, based on the availability of grants. And sometimes, we plan to do that at that particular time, and then we don't get chosen for that grant, so we have to kick it down another year to try to, maximize available funding from the state. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comments or questions? Mary?
Are bridges ever financed through a bond? I mean, if the public had I don't like the idea, but I'm just wondering, is the public concerned enough about this bridge? If it didn't fit into a capital planning scheme where we could expect a grant, would the urgency be something that would be what the residents of this town would stomach? I don't know.
Bonding has to go to the voters.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just throwing it out there as an alternative. Is this something that the voters would feel strongly about, so strongly that they want to do that?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, the board could certainly consider whether we wanted to put an article on the warrant for that.
Right. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands. Paul Manganello, you had your hand up.
She's had her hand up for a long time.
Raise my hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had your hand up?
She did.
I'm gonna put it down when you guys go.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want to go to the two, please introduce yourself?
Thanks.
And it's a 3-minute period for comment.
Thanks very much. My name is Rachel Coombs. I live on Main Street. Thanks for addressing this issue that's important to a lot of us who live in town. I use the bridge a lot. To keep things brief, a few points I want to highlight. There were 2 main factors that caused the effluent. One is rainfall, but the other was heat. So just addressing the rain flow and snow runoff with the second alternative wouldn't address the heat issue. So with climate change causing many of these factors, so in future summers, we can expect more rainfall, but we can also expect higher temperatures and more flooding. So there are a lot of ways in which the addressing just the surface over top of the bridge wouldn't really, you can understand how there could be several other environmental problems that would cause the effluent. So that was one point I wanted to make. The second is that I think with the expense, I personally really think that the people of the Upper Valley would want a pedestrian bridge there. It is very highly used. And by the time we did whatever to disinvest from the bridge and then planned a pedestrian bridge, as Tom said, I think by the time the cost of all of that was taken into account, and you lose the traffic, off gassing or whatever the word is of the downtown traffic congestion, it seems to me it makes a lot more sense to go with option 4.3, where we can retain the bridge for pedestrians, bikes, and motor vehicles without the vulnerabilities of the previous option with uncertain climate future. And I just wanted to add, I'm trying to remember the route of the turkey trot, but doesn't the turkey trot use that bridge? I think it might. So I think it's a very, very used bridge by pedestrians, and it makes a beloved loop, and retaining that as a pedestrian loop, I think, would be very, very, very near and dear to our hearts. But by the time, as I already said, by the time something was come up with after mitigating the effluent, it seems like option 4.3 makes a lot more sense. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have several hands up. I know, Paul, you've been waiting for a while. You had your hand up earlier, so I'm going to ask you to go first.
Thank you. I basically was going to ask what Chris Kaufman had kind of just verbalized, the fact that they have carried out a traffic monitoring program, and he mentioned, what the numbers were. But I think that, this is just our infrastructure. And we have to be prepared for the fact that, it's gonna fail. And there has to be some kind of a blueprint going forward as to what gets cycled out and what gets cycled in. And we have spent a lot of money trying to rehab this bridge, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be rehabbed. There are just too many things that are, affecting that creosote. And it's, whether it's below or above, I don't think it matters. I think we just have to kind of put it to the town for a vote and hope for the best, and take it down and replace it. And I think it should be replaced. There's a lot, as Chris had mentioned, there's a lot of traffic between Beaver Meadow and Turnpike going to the dump, going out to Sharon, and I think we just need to kind of move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, Jan, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can be brief because I think I can restate and agree with things that have come from the board and from other comments. It's clear the status quo is unacceptable, and we've tried various diapers and temporary things, and so I think we can jump over option one quickly. Option two on the membrane, I agree with several comments that the water is one thing, but we know that a hot summer day makes that stuff drip, whether it's raining or not. So I think the membrane is going to end up being maintenance, and we're going to end up talking about Moore Lane Bridge for years to come. If a bike ped bridge costs almost as much as a roadway, then I don't think we need to study the various things. If it's an extra 100,000 out of 700,000 to get cars on it, that seems like the way to go. So I would jump to funding options and timing of those. If we say we want to replace it, we want to replace it with a full 50 to 75 year concrete deck, then what are our funding options? And if we wait a year or two, do we get a really good funding option? That's where we are. We know what we want to do. How do we do it? And how do we pay for it? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Peter, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of things. Agree with everything Jan had to say, but I do want to emphasize two major points, and that is we've entered into this discussion now data points that are not in the report that was in front of us and given to the town. One is the idea of pedestrian bridge being roughly the same cost as another type of bridge. Where are we getting that from? I appreciate, Tom Knight, your expertise, but you seem to not have that figure in front of you and did not study the cost of the pedestrian bridge. So I want to make that point very clear, because I think it's entering into the conversation in a way that it could be inaccurate. Number two, I have not heard of a traffic study on Moore Lane, and it did seem as if Chris Kaufman was saying those numbers, but is that a data point that we have in front of us? Can I see those? Has the board seen that traffic study? Because I live on Moore Lane, and I'm not aware that we've had a traffic study that it tells us that 380 to 400 cars a day are on Moore Lane. So another point I want to make is there is, as everybody who lives in the area knows, another way to get from Beaver Meadow to Turnpike, and that is Brigham Hill Road to Tilden Hill. So people going to the dump can definitely go that way without having to go into town, and everybody in the area would know that. I want to ask a question, though, to the Stantec folks. I really appreciate the report and I appreciate your expertise. Can you tell us a little bit more about the chemicals and I'll ask my questions and then I'll back off. But the chemicals are exceeding residential standards. I've asked a lot of questions about this. We seem to be relying on a very limited report that was done years ago that at the time residents were not allowed to ask the company that made that report any questions at all. So we're just told that these are very hazardous chemicals and they're exceeding residential standards, but we don't know anything else about it and weren't permitted again by the town manager at the time to ask questions to Murray and Masterson. Second question, how much chemical emulsion is stored in the bridge? Can you give us an estimation of actually exactly how much chemical that we're just kind of sitting on and waiting for another rainstorm or waiting for the heat to bring it down? And then finally, how much is the report that you have all prepared, how much does that cost? Because I've been calculating how much we have now spent on this bridge, and it's exceeding $140,000 at this point. And I assume that your expertise is also going to cost us considerably, and it's worth it because finally we have some clarity. And again, I appreciate that. Last thing I want to say before I give way is I want to echo Priscilla. This is way too big a decision to spring on the town and the week of Thanksgiving. I know 3 neighbors in my neighborhood that would like to be here but are traveling because of Thanksgiving. So that's something I want to say is like, I don't feel it's a good faith effort to get actual town input in just one single meeting. And that's why Priscilla rightly suggested that this needed more time and more input from the public. And I think if the board is serious about getting input from the public, then you should really be serious about that. So
Thank you, Peter.
thank you.
Okay, Tom, we had a couple of questions for you. If you have that information available, could you share that with us? The makeup of the emulsion and how much there might be in the bridge?
You want me to handle that, Tom?
Yes, please, David.
Yeah, this is Dave Allwine. I'm a colleague of Tom's from Stantec. I work more on the hazardous waste side of things, where Tom's more the structural engineer type. So the emulsion itself is as you might guess, is a petroleum-derived product. Petroleum is made up of a whole universe of different compounds. Some of them have lighter molecular weights. Some of them have heavier molecular weights. The things that make up the emulsion tend to be towards the heavier side of things. So the naphthalene, the benzoate pyrene, and other compounds, those are typically called heavy end compounds, and lumped all together, they're sometimes referred to as polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons. That's just another name for those types of compounds. A number of them are carcinogenic. Things like benzoate pyrene, chrysene. They do have standards by the Vermont DEC. In many cases, the standards are based on their carcinogenicity. Those standards are maintained by the DES, and they do change from time to time. The DES, I know, updated their standards as recently as early 2024. But the type of compounds we're talking about, because they are heavier petroleum compounds, tend to have certain physical properties because of that. They are somewhat solvent in water. The emulsion itself is a solution primarily of the petroleum product and water. That's why it tends to be easily dissolved from rainwater or melting snow. It also has a certain amount of volatility to it. That's why you can smell them, especially when it gets hot, and why you can smell road tar and that kind of thing when it's 90 degrees out. But in terms of the amount that's actually in the wood decking of the bridge, that's kind of hard to tell. I'm not an expert per se in the actual, how they put this stuff down. And of course, because because of the leakage and the discharge of the material, we know that they put way too much of the material down when it was originally used. But to be able to tell you that there's 100 gallons or 500 gallons or some number within the wood itself, I think that'd be hard to come up with without actually doing testing on the wood. I have experience with other sites where there was treated wood that also leaked out over time, and these are particularly railroad properties where they used railroad ties that were overly charged with wood preservative chemicals that over time just rained down, and in some cases it happened for years. So I know that these things can take a long time to sort of work themselves out on their own. So I don't know if there was any, well, the other questions. I know you had multiple questions.
The other ones do fall to me because I'm the project manager for this financially for Stantec. So as far as how much we're spending on Stantec services, we're authorized up to $30,800, and to date we've spent $6,800, and that doesn't count work that's happened this pay week. We haven't entered our time cards yet for the end of the week, so we've spent about $7,000 of a $30,000 budget, and it for us, I don't think we know where the finish line is yet with this report. It'll depend on how many more alternatives we need to look at and what we need to do to satisfy the curiosity and come up with the right solution here. So that's the range of costs.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All right, I see Matt Sweat's hand up, and that will be our final comment of the evening. Matt, go ahead.
Hi. Just two quick comments. First, as sort of a Norwich resident and someone who lives on Turnpike, we go to town down Turnpike, and I see people jogging, walking, biking, using that Moore Lane Bridge as sort of that loop around Huntley Meadow. And if Norwich's goal is one of its, focuses is to be more of a walkable town, I think that bridge has a lot of value to it and gets a lot of use. And then the other perspective is as sort of deputy fire chief, I've talked with Alex Northern, our fire chief, as well, and we're both in agreement that we don't Moore Lane as a bridge for fire response really isn't important. So I can't speak for the police use of that as sort of a cut through, because they don't always start from the same spot. But for us responding from the fire station, we don't need to use the Moore Lane Bridge.
Okay, all right, thank you, Matt.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to take the minutes. Matt, you said from your perspective, it's not important?
Yeah, from a fire emergency response,
Okay.
the Moore Lane Bridge, the chief and I are in agreement that the Moore Lane Bridge is not necessary to be intact.
Thank you.
Right, that's important information to know. All right, so I think this will conclude the public comment portion. The board can decide if they would like to have a future meeting where we have more public comments, or maybe we could invite the public who couldn't be here tonight to submit comments to the select board. Always happy to hear from the residents. So if you, Peter, if you want to pass that along to the people that that couldn't be here tonight, if they want to write to the select board, we're happy to hear from them.
Sure. Thank you. I will. Thanks.
Marcia?
Another question for Tom. Given climate change, and we had a severe flood in 2017 where Moore Brook or Bloodbrook was really devastated. Is the height of the bridge as it is currently, as it's structured, is that a good structure to withstand flooding of the kind that we can see in Vermont?
I can't make the predictions about how climate change is going to impact our river models. We all know that's very debatable. Right now, the current structure, exceeds the hydraulic design requirements, and those for a town structure with this amount of usage, it's the 25-year storm, or the kind of storm that has a 4% chance of happening in any given year. So the 4% annual exceedance probability storm will pass under this bridge with a foot of clearance. So we call that foot of clearance freeboard, and usually that's to account for the sticks and logs and twigs that are carried downstream as the storm's happening. So it meets that requirement. In fact, I believe this bridge passes the 50-year or the 2% annual exceedance, and with close to that freeboard. So
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Mary?
If we are gonna think about follow-up, I would be interested in if there were funding options, different funding options for alternative 4.3, replacing the deck, just what that would look like, if there's gonna be a follow-up to this.
Right. Well, that's something that can be explored, and I don't know that Brennan would have any timeline on when he could come back to us with that. But if there are grants or other monies out there that we could use for this purpose.
Well, we have, I think, looked during the last 6 months of trying to figure out, is there a way to solve this problem, quickly and cost effectively? And we have not really identified anything that would fit this particular circumstance, because the bridge itself is still structurally sound. So a lot of times those grants that Chris has mentioned, and he's got his hand up, you might want to add to this, those grants are based on replacement timelines for bridges and structures that have a useful life. And as we've already heard, this has, a significant amount of useful life left, but for the fact that it has this terrible emulsion issue going on, we'd be fine with this bridge for, the near term. So,
and the other consideration is, if we make the decision to replace it, how quickly could we get a company under contract to do that work? Because they're all very busy.
that might be a total unknown at this point, but that is something I think if we determine an outcome, an option that we're going to proceed with, I think we have Stantec again, kind of as our engineering consultant that might be able to help us work through some of those details. I think really the purpose of tonight is to try to give Tom and David something to bring back if we want to have them explore some other options. I've heard the idea of a pedestrian bridge from a number of people, which has not been fully fleshed out. So that might be something that we could add to the final report that would say, okay, if we disinvested the motorized section of this, but kept a pedestrian access across the span, what would we be looking for a cost there? That might be useful to people. And Tom, what else, I guess, from your standpoint, would you like to have as guidance leading to tonight's meeting? And I do see Chris's hand up, so let him chime in.
Well, let's let Tom respond to your question. What does he need from us?
Yeah, I think understanding that that's an option you want to see. So we can add option 4.5, which would be, or maybe it's 4.3A, replace the superstructure with a pedestrian friendly structure. And there might be some more exploratory things we could look into, like if you really are curious about answering some of those questions about how much volume of materials in there, and is the membrane, what are the chances of success of the membrane? We could do something for that. Like you could take a step where you rip off a piece of pavement and you see how well the membrane adheres to it, and see how watertight you can make the top of the bridge, and that would give you a sense for how successful that option might be. Those are just other ideas, but I felt like they distracted more from the real decision making to include those. So I think if we get clear direction on what other alternatives you'd like us to include in the report, and are there other factors that might be decision-making factors? Like you mentioned, time to execute, how long would it take to get a contract together and get it built? We could put that in as a line item, so that might be a decision-making factor for some folks.
Okay, all right, thank you. Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly. So not only, so I am interested in some more information on a pedestrian option. So that would be non-vehicular. And I'm also curious, Brennan, how much you feel like it's appropriate to sort of talk about the other plans around the not sidewalk for Beaver Meadow, and then I would also want any pedestrian bridge to link up to the existing sidewalk infrastructure that is on Turnpike, right? So, so there's like a little bit of a pedestrian bridge package that I'm curious in, right? Because if this bridge could build more bike ped infrastructure, and if the bike ped infrastructure could be more robust than one that also includes a vehicular option, I'm curious about that, right? So yeah, that's all. And then the one point I would also make is we keep talking about climate, but there's a continued school of thought that how we should be handling climate is to be decommissioning, right? To find ways to actually remove expensive fossil fuel based infrastructure in our wheelhouse. And so I agree that it would be rather gutting. It would be a very gutting experience to effectively go to Moore Lane and look down and just see like a hole, like visually, aesthetically, the experience of walking, right? That's not what we want. It is the thing that I think would probably make most sense from climate a budget, right? We're talking all the time about how we need to be cognizant of things we can cut. Right, $1 million bridge that is used perhaps not as often as other bridges. But again, I don't know. That's a speculation, right? I also only learned about the traffic study from Moore Lane recently. So my final point is I'm curious about the bridge option. And while I'm sure we will be looking to replacing this bridge in a vehicular way, we probably shouldn't be. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Priscilla?
I just want to advocate some more for having another meeting with more on this subject, with more warning for interested townspeople. I mean, as Peter said, it's right before Thanksgiving, not ideal time.
Yeah, we didn't have much choice on the timing.
And we broadcast the idea more.
Well, if they come back with more information, maybe we can do another meeting.
Yes, just to include the additional information. Right. And as you said, we encourage everybody out there to send in written comments. That's a good thing too.
Right. Okay. I see Chris Kaufman. You have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. There was some conversation with VTrans about the potential for replacement of this bridge and structural funding for this bridge, and I would say pretty much their response was the odds of receiving funding for that will be pretty low. Due to the fact that it's not structurally unsound and that there are other needs in the state for actual structural type bridges. So I do not think that would be an eventual source of funding for this bridge. And secondly, just to answer a question about where this traffic study came from, it came from Two Rivers did a surface inventory report in 2021, and it was based on that study that was here when I joined. So there you go.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Brenda, did I see you wanting to say something?
No, Well, I will just, so we have commissioned Stantec for a fairly small scope here, which is not to include kind of the overall pathway, along the river that we're all anticipating. I just want to say that's really not what we've asked them to look at in this project. It's
Right.
just the bridge, kind of ending at the bridge. And there are certainly other pieces of that fit together with walkability and pedestrian loop that we want to look at, and falls into kind of the same, how do we make a walkable environment there? But I don't think Stantec's the one that's going to be focusing on that.
Okay. All right. Chris, your hand is still up. Did you have another comment, or you just forgot to take it down? Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so I think we have covered everybody's opinion on this, and Brennan and Stantec have more information about what to look for and bring back to us. So I think we should probably move on. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom and David, for coming and sharing your expertise. Did we decide about another meeting? No, I think we'll wait until we get more information back from Stantec and put that in the packet, and then.
Well, so why don't we just figure out how we would do that? So Stantec really has planned on having this as the public engagement meeting. I'm sure we could talk to them about, is there a possibility of having them come back? They were going to now take the information from tonight and put that into a final report, and that would come back to the board. Again, that would be the chance for the board to then make a decision on one of the options, and then they would pursue whichever option we want to send them kind of to put more detail into. So
Okay.
that's kind of the timeline that we had laid out with them in the initial.
But I think we can allow for more public input when that final report comes back.
That will be certainly brought into a public meeting, yes.
Yeah, so we could ask, people to respond either in person or write to us with their comments about the final report. Mary?
A question about that final report. So would that include information about the pedestrian option or not?
Yeah, I think the direction we just gave Tom and David is to explore that and come back with another 4.3A or whatever it might be.
Thank you. Okay.
So can we just summarize, they're gonna come back with a 4.3A
Well, it's
something.
call it that because that was just another option for pedestrian, kind of more detailed look at a pedestrian bridge option as another possibility.
Okay, and anything else more about a bridge replacement, or just trying to get this?
Well, he said he could come back with more information about finding a company to put under contract and when that might happen and how that might happen.
Well, I don't think Tom said that.
Well, I can.
Go ahead.
Like, I can give you an estimate for how long it takes to get the bid package together and to get it under construction. So if that's a decision-making factor you'd like to see, we can add that to the matrix.
So just for the minutes, can you just summarize, you're gonna do an estimate for the bid to come back, the timing?
Yeah, an estimate of how long it takes to advertise and construct the project.
Okay, and more information about a pedestrian bridge.
Yes.
And anything else?
I think that's all we're asking.
Well, he did. So, I mean, I think, look, like the conversation did not go in this direction, but he also Tom suggested that, you could budget potential testing for the repaving option to more scientifically determine the viability of that option, right? So I don't know if we need to do that as part of as part of the process, or if, again, we have decided that it is politically impossible to do further testing into a structurally sound bridge that is leaking emulsion. I have no opinion. I'm just saying that that might be a responsible thing to do, or if we decided that it is not, then we'll just move on.
Does the board wish to have them give us more information about how effective the membrane might be so that we could more seriously consider that as an option?
No.
Okay. Marcia?
No,
You had another comment?
I was just gonna say, I think we know from empirical evidence, it's leaking, so. And we know the propensity for these things to continue to leak for years, as we've been told. So, no, I don't think we should waste more money on that particular aspect.
Okay. All right, so 3 people said definitely no, don't go down that road. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
4.
I think, are we ready to move on? If so, thank you, David and Tom, for coming to this evening, and we look forward to getting more information from you at a future meeting.
Thank you for the discussion. Appreciate the input.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, we're on to number 4, public comments for items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments or anything not on the agenda? I don't see any hands. Okay, then we'll go on to 4A, which is the one we added, response to the Valley News article and the town manager's contract amendment. So I will open up the floor to anyone who would like to comment. Mary?
I'd just like to talk about why I supported the amendment. I understand in the past, I think that the town has expected its town managers to live in town for a number of reasons. And I think that when we set up the initial contract, we did not have that requirement. And just considering the factors that are in play, that we have a town manager that lives on the other side of the Green Mountains, so it's a significant commute. We have a housing shortage in this state and in this country that's atrocious. Anyone who's trying to find housing is, it's daunting to think about, moving and finding a place. So there's that. I think the hybrid form of work, we're doing it tonight, where some of the people are present and some are not, has become a way of life. I think it's a more modern situation. I think young people, I'm thinking of my kids who are kind of in the corporate world, the engineering world, and they do a fair amount of remote work, and they also do a fair amount of in-person work. So I think that the blend of hybrid and in-person is probably important to establish. So I saw this contract amendment as just extending the arrangement that we had at the beginning of the contract with our town manager so that he could continue to have working conditions that work for him and work for the town. And I want to keep our employee, as a select board, we're really only responsible for our employee, who is the town manager, and I want good working conditions. I also disagree with people in town that sort of, want a constant open door policy. I want to protect the town manager's time so he can get some work done. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't ever stick his nose out and say hi, but I just think there's maybe a more modern way of looking at what a town manager has to do, how he manages his time, he or she, and how to create good, productive working conditions. And I do believe there was an error in the values that was stating that the original contract required a town manager to work here, and that was true in the past, but not true of this contract. So also, I think it would be great if we could somehow convey information in a way that was factual the first time. If we can all get on the same page, Valley News is our designated print source. It's where people get information besides the meetings and the that are recorded in minutes, so it's valuable. So if we can try to get to the best of our ability to get all the sources of information and all the allowable sources of information together, I just think we'd all be better off. So that's my little rant.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Priscilla?
I'd like to add on to what Mary said. I personally, I like to do everything in person, everything I can. And so I was resistant to the idea of hybrid for a while, but I realized I do have to kind of get with what's going on. And I also understand that sometimes you're more productive when you're not in an office situation and you can just concentrate better and get more done. And somebody has said to me, well, I've had some discussion with people, well, is the town manager not as available? And I don't think that that's really the case. I mean, he is here 3 days a week and sometimes additional times. But if you really want to get a hold of him, it is so hard to find out, first of all, well, is he in? And you know, most of us would, I mean, if the store is closed, he might be on the telephone or in some other kind of meeting. You know, you stop in next door and you say to Miranda or Heidi, you know, is he available? And they'll tell you if he is. And if he isn't, you can leave a message. If he's not here that day, you can leave a message. If you want to talk to him that day, they will relay that message and Brendan is responsive. He'll call you back. I mean, so I don't think there's a problem anymore with the idea. And I'm not aware. I think people maybe don't like the idea that the town manager is not physically present, but I don't think it really matters too much to how he's accomplishing what he needs to do and being available to us.
Thank you. I'd just like to invite Brennan to maybe come to some of the pancake breakfasts that the Grange is holding.
They're great. They're great.
Bring your wife. We'd love to meet her. Come to a potluck dinner on the first Sunday, usually on the first Sunday of the month. And, you know, just get to know some of the people that attend these events and be more part of the community. We'd love to have you.
There's a potluck this coming Sunday, and it's going to honor Demo, whom we all love.
Okay, Marcia.
I think that makes an assumption that he hasn't met a lot of people. You probably don't know all the people he's met. And I think you probably know about these things because Bree organizes a lot of them. I think that I would like to see the town manager's office just send a very short correction request to the Valley News so that the inaccuracies that Mary described can be published. Okay, so do we want to do that as a motion or just consensus? What's pleasure of the board?
Motion's always a good thing.
Okay. I move to direct the town manager to send a brief correction request to the Valley News to correct the inaccuracies reported as to his contract.
If I may.
You may.
So there are a number of factual inaccuracies in the previous articles that are run that we might want to all put together. So if you wanted to limit it to just factual with me, or if you want to just say, I guess published factual inaccuracies, that might be better.
To correct the published factual inaccuracies. Does that do it?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion from Marcia. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to number 5, the expenditure request from the police department for HVAC at the public safety facility. We have a request from the chief in the packet. Does anyone have any questions on this? Any comments? Priscilla?
Thank you, Matt, for a very clear budget, and I like the format you used. I appreciate that.
We're not on the budget. We're
not in the budget? Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong thing.
We're on the HVAC.
Sorry. I'm ahead of myself. We're behind.
This is a request to use reserve funds.
I have stuff in the wrong order here. Okay, never mind. Sorry. No, it was clear.
Question? Go ahead. Are you cold? What's going on with the heating?
I have a space heater in the office I turn on every morning for about 3 hours and I go somewhere else.
Doesn't sound safe in a public safety building.
As you know, I'm also a firefighter and I have 4 space heaters with every bone of my body. But, I also like to, not freeze. When I walk in the morning, like yesterday morning, it was somewhere in the low 50s.
Oh.
My question is, why would we want to charge this to reserve fund as opposed to just a repair fund? Because there is a budget for repair.
As you're, I'm sure aware, the original invoice. So there's sort of 3 spheres that are overlapping. The initial invoice for, let me just scroll down here.
$1,438.60.
Yes, ma'am. That one. That we expected to resolve the issue. They came out, they found the leak. Fixed the leak, recharged the system. They thought everything was in good shape. So we went ahead and we received that invoice, processed it as a normal repair, and went on about our business. And then when it failed again, they came out and had to do some additional investigating and testing. Just so you understand, these mini splits are, this is probably, I think, one of the biggest ones that we have down there. So it feeds, one outside unit feeds, I think 4 different air handlers in 4 different parts of the building. This particular air handler that has failed feeds my office, sergeant's office, the bathroom, and an interview room. So right in that little cubby. So when the system discharges, then it discharges the whole thing. There's a rule, and I'm sorry, I'm going to botch this, but if it expends more than X number of times its capacity of coolant in a period of time, then the HVAC guys can't fix it anymore. So they did a lot of pushing in on the second trip to try to make sure that they'd found all the issues connected with that particular mini split. So they've determined that, oh, and by the way, the air handler is 11 months out of warranty. Perfect timing, perfect engineering, and so in light of that, because it was sort of a continuation of the same entity, my suggestion is to transfer the money on paper out of the reserve fund so that we don't end up short on our repair and maintenance line item. The reserve fund just seems to be a little better able to take that hit this time around. So what we have at this moment is the first invoice that was paid, the second invoice that is coming, and then this third estimate, which includes additional work that has been done. So when you look on that where it says invested, that means we already owe for that part. And so we expect the whole thing to be somewhere just over 7,000. So that's why I asked for an authorization of up to 8,500, because I just don't have a lot of faith that we're going to get out of it for 7,000.
So is this sort of still in a constant repair phase, or will this include replacement of any units? I mean, as far as the nature of the repairs, are they still chasing leaks, or will they, you know?
I don't believe there's
system or what?
I don't believe they're chasing leaks, because they have isolated that air handler that has failed.
That's the problem. Okay.
Recharged the system and it's functioning fine.
So when
The other three air handlers.
when that air handler failed, did they have to replace it?
Well, that's what we're asking to do.
Okay. Thank you.
All they did is they blocked off that line, and then gave us a quote, because they had to go figure out what it was and where to get it and how much it was going to cost. So
I think that's the last line item on this ARC mechanical quote, the deducted Fujitsu HP 116712.
I have another question.
Yes. Go ahead.
When it's replaced, will that have a new warranty?
for that particular air handler, yes.
How long would that be?
Either 5 or 7 years, depending on if I send in the warranty registration card.
Oh, please.
I promise I can't. I've learned entirely too much about these things.
Yes, thank you. But I think that's important information too.
And I just flagged, I know we're gonna get into the budget next, but I'll just flag this for you. What ARC has told us as well is that we are going to be due to some bigger problems with the HVAC system in that building as a whole because of some, not really decisions, but when they installed those mini splits, there's a particular kind of insulation that was used that is causing the copper lines that they're insulating to fail. So we are expecting, that's why when we get over to the budget, you're going to see me ask for an increased deposit into that building fund over the next couple of years, so that a couple, 3 years from now, we can RFP, hey, somebody needs to come in and rip all these copper lines out and replace them all with.
Replace with PVC or something?
I don't know. I suspect it may still be the copper lines, but it would be with an insulation that does not corrode the copper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to be.
Okay.
Marsha,
That sounds like it might be an insurance issue. You know, it's a failure of something that was installed improperly.
Well, I don't know that they knew, from what ARC is telling me, I don't think they knew this at the time. I think it was, you remember God, I don't want to say the drywall issue a few years ago? This may be one of those kind of situations.
Okay, and one more question. All right. We're doing repairs. We don't need to do a replacement.
So they're going to replace this one air handling unit that is failed. And it's sort of like so many things right now. There's so little repair that can be done to things where they're almost modular. So we'll listen out over here for another.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. I don't see any other questions or comments. Would someone like to make a motion? And I left the amount blank because I wasn't sure where the board wanted to go on this authorization. So whoever makes the motion will have to fill in the blank.
You said 8,000.
As for 8,500, it's what they've estimated right now is $7,019, but I just added 1,500 onto it.
Also, the memo says not more than. So the motion could be up to, or not more than.
Right, it could be up to,
Right.
okay. Someone want to make the motion?
Yeah.
You want to do it? Go ahead, Marcia.
I move to approve the expenditure of up to $8,500 from fund number 47, public safety facility for HVAC repairs.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, if there are no questions or comments, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a no because I do not support this coming from the reserve fund. Okay, next item, FY26 budget review for the public facility, public safety facility. So we have FY24, 25, and 26 budget number on this. Anyone have any questions on this?
If I'm on the right page here, about the generator. So additional fund requests for purchase of generator anticipated to be greater than $60,000. We have a.
No, you're on
the wrong one.
You need to be on the budget page, Mary, this one, public safety facility.
Oh, okay. I know I have.
Can we, so I have
I won't run the
Mary
figures.
on the call. I thought maybe the most effective way would be to share a screen
Project it.
here.
That would be good.
We're gonna try that. Barry, are you, with us?
So I don't, I'm on my home computer because the sound didn't work on my work computer.
Okay.
So I didn't transfer.
Yeah, understood. All right, so let me see if I can, unfortunately, if I do this, I can't see my screen,
Do you
so.
want me to do it?
Do you want to do it? Yeah. So I'm going to make you a co-host. And then if you can go to the packet, share your screen.
Yep.
Okay. So Barry, I'm going to make you not a co-host then.
Town manager giveth to the town manager.
I just say control everything here in my virtual world.
So,
If you go to the Zoom, it should say share. That's what it is.
in the green one, it's very bright.
Yeah. So this should be your desktop. Oh, there we go.
Everybody see that?
No.
No.
Sorry. I'll make it bigger for you.
That would be great. Thank you.
So I think Mary was, if I may, I think you were asking the right question there.
Oh, how weird.
So just again to kind of refresh everyone's memory or those watching at home. So we are looking specifically at the three of the 5 departments that had come in with operational budgets that were over 6%. And this was just a chance for the board to look at those in more detail. If they had any specific questions, they could ask those. So I think your question was maybe why are we looking at more than $60,000 cost for a replacement generator, and do we have a current quote on how much more it will be? And the answer is no. We don't know exactly how much that's going to be right now, nor necessarily when we would replace that. So this is really just kind of a preemptive. We think it's going to be over 60,000 because everything has gone up in price. We want to make sure we are accommodating the ability to have money there if and when we do
move to replace.
Well, that's a different reserve fund. What we're looking at here is the police station or public safety facility designated fund, which I don't have the number right in front of me, but that what you're talking about is a capital plan for generator fund, which is different.
Right.
The police public safety fund is, the generator fund is 146, which we have 147 as a public safety facility. And if I understood you correctly, you're saying this $50,000, that's $50,000 that's here is going into the public safety facility fund for these future HVAC repairs that will be coming soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So
I apologize for confusing people you're right.
So what we're looking at is year over year, just operating expenses. It says that the FY26 proposed budget is up by 21.64% over FY25. And these amounts don't look like huge increases per line item, but they do add up to over $8,000, which ends up being about 21.5% increase.
So the two things that stand out to me in this budget that as far as increases, we doubled the building supply, but it's, again, this is the tyranny of small numbers, is how I've heard it referred to. When you take something that's $727 and make it $1,500, it's still not that many dollars, but it's a 100% increase. So we did increase that, and to better reflect, I think, what we have previously spent. I know that our phone and internet is going up because we've had to add a firewall to make CGIS compliance. So we've split that sort of between this phone and internet in the facility and the Vibers Nibers fund over in the police budget to try to spread it out a bit. The electricity, again, I was just looking today, I think we exceeded our budget last year by just a hair. So we know prices are going up. So we really tried to stick with what Barry published in here as, the expected increases based on just inflation and regular budgeting.
What kind of supplies do you use?
That's toilet paper towels, soap, consumables, trash bags, those kind of things.
They're about double.
Well, I think we've been going over that, and we've been pulling from other places for that in the past couple of years. So
look for the fire department.
No, because that comes out of this.
You're right.
So we own some of this, and the fire department owns some of it, and we work through it together. Like the emergency management budget is the fire department's, but Alex and I sit down and rummage through it every year together. We really try to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Beyond the HVAC repairs, I think we're going to see some, the building's knocking on, I think, 8 years old now. So we're starting to see some of the places are starting to see a little age and need a little touch up and tune ups here and there. Nothing big, but it's better and cheaper to maintain than it is to fix.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to stay on top of those things where we can.
I don't know if you can see me, but I have a question, Pam. But I don't know if Marcia's hand also went up.
Go ahead, Roger.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if the designated fund item should be talked about now, if we should talk about it as part of capital.
I think it's capital.
Okay, so I'll wait for my question then.
Okay, Marcia, you had a question or comment?
I didn't, but I'll make one. I don't have a problem with this. It's where we are in life. And at some point we're going to hopefully not, but if we do need that building, we need that building. So For,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
for
just-
other things other than what it's being used for right now, emergencies, et cetera, et cetera.
It made the list because it was over 6%.
Right, yeah.
So, if we don't have any more questions on that, should we move on to the police department budget? Number 7. Any questions or comments on the police department budget? I have one.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what COLA percentage we're using for, FY 26.
I believe we're using what we used last year because we don't have a final number yet. We're anticipating it'll be similar.
And that was at 3.64 or something.
3.54, I believe. Barry, chime in if I'm incorrect there.
3.46.
46.
I had my numbers transposed, 3.64, 3.46.
3.5, roughly 3.5.
Okay, so if we're looking at 3.5 for COLA and 2% is the step increase, is that consistently 2%? Okay, so we're looking at 5.5% as a potential increase in wages. And when I look at the police chief wage, we're up 6.6%. Then when I look at the police officer wage, we're down 1%.
Yeah.
So I'm a little confused by that.
Well,
And the administrative wage is up 8.9%.
Barry, I'm going to ask you if you have any thoughts on that. I think these were all calculated based on a wage spreadsheet that we put together that was calculating those increases as well as the increases that the CBA employees were going to receive, because so we had basically a new wage chart that's going to be in effect here, is already in effect.
Okay, but the police chief and the administrative assistant is not part of the CBA, correct? Or is the
Administrative assistant
is, yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Excuse me, sorry, I can't raise my hand. The
That's okay, go ahead.
the step increases are based on anniversary date. So the spreadsheet, Ashley is the staff accountant who does payroll. So she worked on this and we reviewed it together. She took the wages as they were and then built it out over the full year so that, you know, people's wages change with the step, not for the full 12 months. It depends on when their anniversary date is. You know, if someone started in January, then sure, maybe it's for the 12, you know, for 12 months or, but it's all calculated based on reality, I guess. So these, I feel like if anything, the wages are closer, to what the expenses actually are expected to be of anything, because we have solid numbers to build on.
So yes, but Barry, does the police officer wage also include unfilled positions?
Does the police? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it assumes like the first step. So it assumes like a certified, I'm sorry, the chief can talk about this, a certified 2. It assumes a certified officer.
It assumes whatever it was decided on by the department head of where that person would start, what the advertising was for. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in that particular section, remember, there's a sergeant who's on a different pay scale or pay grade, and he makes almost as much as I do. And then your police officer.
That's not true.
You'd be surprised. And then the officer wage, because they are unfilled, which, by the way, I'm hopeful that we're making progress. Those are, we threw a dart right in the middle of the pay scale. So, I mean, the hope is, while yes, we can hire brand new people, send them to the academy. The hope is we find some people with some experience and time and grade, and that's going to demand a little higher start point.
Right, and you budgeted for that, which is great.
Yeah.
The other question I had was on health insurance. I see health insurance
Yeah.
costs going down 13.8% for the police department, but going up in other departments. So
A lot, yeah.
I was confused by that. Yeah, DPW is going up. I didn't do the calculation, but it looks like it's at least 40%. And when this is going down 13.8%. We have people that
So
are,
Barry has her hand up.
okay, Barry, go ahead.
So Matt, for example, doesn't take the health insurance. So it's based on who's using the health insurance at the time that we know of. And for the unfilled position, the rate was calculated at the family rate, the gold, whatever the town pays for.
Right.
I think it's the standard gold or something like that. So that's why it fluctuates, because we didn't put in health cost for Chief Romei when he doesn't utilize it.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Priscilla, go ahead.
Cruiser video equipment, cruiser maintenance, cruiser supplies, they're all up. We have mostly new cruisers, don't we?
Well, so taking those sort of individually, the cruiser video equipment, that 13,000 is the annual body camera, cruiser camera lease payment.
Okay.
So that will be
You didn't have it last year.
correct. We made the initial payment, which was 29,000 and change out of other funds. And then for the next 4 years, we'll have that 13,371 as a flat rate.
Right. Oh, nice.
For everything going forward. And then you were asking about, so
Like the maintenance going up on relatively new.
So relatively new, yes, but not new. So our fleet of 4 vehicles today, one of them is a 2023, one of them is a 2020. The 2020 is the one with the gremlins that we seem to be working most of them out at the moment. Our 2017, I was going to flag this for you in the capital discussion, but I'll go ahead and flag it for you now. Our 2017 cannot get inspected because of rot and rust. So I'm sending it out to a couple other places just to validate what we've been told by our routine shop. And then we're likely to come see you in January to order the next vehicle. So, and just to finish that thought, the reason that we would come to you in January to order that next vehicle is it's 7 to 9 months, best case. Our 2 vehicles that we ordered, when was it?
Last spring.
Early last spring, late winter. We still haven't seen yet. They were promised
2023.
This spring of 2024.
Yeah.
Like late winter, early spring, we ordered 2
Yeah.
on that lease, right? See, they were due to us at the end of June or at the latest in July. Ford just getting started. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And I'll just say we're not the only ones. The Thetford police just had to go buy a car off the lot.
Oh.
And that's a horrible idea for a public safety vehicle. But well, I'm sorry.
Why?
They're just not. So, for instance, the RAV. Okay, Simon bought the RAV for Toyota. That's the car I usually drive, so everybody else can have the marked ones. If I get in it dressed like this with a gun belt on, I'll break the center console.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Not big enough.
because it's just not meant for this type of environment. So we get the ones that are made for the job, and typically they last.
Specifically made for police.
They are police vehicles, and they're wired for it. They're suspension and braking and transmissions and shift patterns and all those things that the gearheads love to talk about. And I have just tell me what I need.
So if we get the 2 lease vehicles, what are they replacing?
They are replacing the 2013 that we sold earlier this year. And they are replacing the other 2013 that was sold about 6 months before I got here.
Okay.
That will bring us to, including the 2017, 4 marked police cars and the RAF, or 4 duty cars in the RAF,
So we have the 2017 and a 2020,
and a 2023.
and a 2023. Is that the RAV4?
No, that's a 2023 Ford police car, Interceptor.
There's more cars than officers, just if anyone's counting.
Well, that's true for now, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we are going to have more officers and cars before spring.
But if we are replacing 2 and we currently have 4, then we would have 6.
We will have 6 on the parking lot, on the lot. Remember that one of them is non-serviceable. It's
Is that one of the ones you recommend to get rid of?
2017.
Yeah, it's very good.
We'll come see you in January.
If I may.
It's just,
This is all very.
So this was a $1,200 increase that we just spent 15 minutes on. I know we talked a little bit more about the police.
No, we're talking about the equipment lease and how that factors into the overall vehicle lineup.
Just said it's a very small amount of money we're talking about here.
I would recommend you get through the budget and stuff, and then I'll come see you in January about that. When I have a little better information on the 17.
Well, let's hope we have the money to fund those. That will be important. Okay. Any other questions on this, or can we move on to public works?
Public Works. I'm sorry, I got one.
Okay, Priscilla has one.
There's a new item, IT support. Did we just simply not have it? It's 11,500. We just didn't have it before?
So, no, we didn't. And we did a lot of stuff in-house. And we have suffered in the past 6 months because of the new requirements that CJIS and the FBI and the state are putting on us for firewalls and information security and those things that we have to do. We went to CCI, who's the town contractor for the rest of the town. Everybody but the police department is in that. I don't know why. It's the way we've always done it. And we went to them and said, they came in, they looked at us. They are CJIS cleared. They do IT support for a dozen other police departments around. And that's sort of an annual number of what it would take for them to do hours.
But if I may, we've been talking with them now for about 3 months about, I'm trying to immediately get them on board, because I think what Chief is finding there is this was all kind of protected police department computer systems that we've lost the person who had been doing that, and it makes a lot of sense to me to get CCI and to give them some support there with IT, which we all run on daily. So we are actually looking right now in the fiscal year 24 budget of how can we find some money that we could put in so that we could get them on before July 1st, because I think it is pretty critical that they have some IT support for their functions. But yes, as Chief said, that 11.5 would be kind of annualizing what we would expect to be paying to include the police department, and we would keep them at this point as a standalone kind of contract under the umbrella of the town.
You just answered my question. Was it going to be an amendment or a separate contract?
No, it'll be separated, but it'll be kind of, as I said, kind of under the town's contract. So it's less expensive for us than if it was just a new entity that came on and wanted to hire CCI.
Okay. All right.
I noticed that training and dues has more than doubled. Is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, so it's expensive to send people anywhere to do anything. I didn't even go to the IACB convention this year, and that was the closest that it will ever get to here. It was in Boston. The reason I didn't go is the dang hotel rooms for $540 a night. I just couldn't do it. So I would like to go to ICP next year. It's important. It's excellent training, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get, as we bring some more folks on, we're going to have that opportunity to send folks out to get the good training they need.
Okay.
It's honestly, it's the travel portion of that that we're anticipating being expensive.
Okay.
I think professional development, this kind of training is, unquestionably needed.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the police department budget? I don't see any. Thank you, Chief, for coming and answering questions.
Did I answer enough on the capital stuff, or do we need to deal with that?
We're gonna hit that later. If you wouldn't mind, I know it's later than not, but I think it's probably helpful to have you around for that. So just again for guidance, so we're satisfied here at the select board level with Chief and his operational budget, and we're gonna proceed forward with that. Okay, thank you.
Proceed. Okay, DPW, is Chris still here, or are you?
This is still here. Thanks, Chris, for being here at 8:45.
Does anybody have any questions on this? Anything jump out at you that you would like answers to? Priscilla?
The road crew overtime, it's gone up a lot. I don't know what the staffing's like. Is that because we're shorthanded? And my other question is, I think it's a comment. I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but health insurance, whoa. That's hugely up.
The health insurance?
Yeah, and I think
22.3%.
that's one of those things, it seems we can't do anything about it except grind our teeth and pay.
That's exactly right. Like every other employer, unfortunately. It's not us, it's everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Now, are we doing this as a separate contractor with the health insurance people, or are we part of a bigger pool?
Part of the bigger pool. It's Blue Cross Blue Shield.
I will say that, it's the percentage, the contribution dwindles each year, right? And so that is something we did negotiate. The percentage is less. We do less each year. It'll be down to 85% in 2 fiscal years, I think.
Right, but this increase
It's huge.
this budget is 54%.
Yeah.
It far exceeds the 22.4, so we must be adding more people.
Well,
into
yeah. My point is it's expensive for us and also for the employees as well. And
right. But I'm just questioning why we're going up 54% year over year. It must be because we're adding more people onto the plan from that department.
We are factoring in, like we did with the police department, vacant positions at a standard goal plan.
Okay. But still, it's budget to budget. And we were budgeting for vacant positions last year.
Yep.
I did have some other questions. I see plowing and sanding where this year we're budgeting 65,000. We know it's going to be more than that. And then next year we're budgeting 108,000. And my question is, when do we get to the point where we're back to our crew doing the plowing and not having to contract out plowing and sanding services? What's the timeline?
Well, I'll answer that question there. So when I came on board here, we've always had a contractor plowing for the town of Norwich, especially on the far end of town. When I came here, we were expending over $20,000 a year for assistance with a full crew. Since that time, we haven't had a full crew. And at one point, we were down to 2 people. Since that time, we've been slowly building a crew back. We currently do not have 2 staff positions filled. We do not have a building and grounds person who comes into the fold and plows and sands with us in the winter. And we do not have another equipment operator position that's been filled. Last year was our intent to use the building and grounds person who was going to be trained up for that, but unfortunately they didn't work out and they never got trained and and that relationship didn't work out and they moved on. And so we've had to start from ground zero again. My intention was to reduce the necessity to get the assistance we need, but based on the staffing levels we currently have right now, we need the assistance of the contractor to do that. Now, when we're budgeting these numbers, we're budgeting as if we have a full staff, and we're also budgeting as if we may not have a full staff to cover our bases. And if we don't fill positions, we're still able to do the job, and thus our wages will drop, our expenditures will drop in those places. And so overall, we will be generally under budget because we will not have a full-time staff person. We've effectively been managing the department understaffed for 3 years. So I guess hopefully that answers your question.
What I heard was we're budgeting for full staff and we're budgeting for full plowing assistance. And so there's no mitigation there of, well, if we get the staffing, we don't need as much plowing assistance, or if we don't get the staffing, we don't need as much money in staffing. So it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Well, I think that's because historically there's been a problem if we don't have the staffing and then we come back and we say we didn't, we assumed we were going to have full staff and we haven't been at full staff for 3 years, then we're going to have to come back and ask for more money because we won't have the money in the budget to do that. But we're not going to spend both pots of money. Either one's going to be expended or the other. It just depends if we are able to fulfill that position or not. And I can tell you right now, it's very difficult. All towns are struggling to find people, and they've been poaching each other's people for the last few years, and it's extremely difficult. But I think we've been doing a commendable job with the existing staff we have, and they've been gaining the experience, and they're getting more proficient as time goes on.
I did.
To my point, we should budget for one or the other. And if we don't have as much staff, then we have money left over to pay the plowing. If we have the plowing money, then we should budget less for staff. I just don't see us having 200% pots of money for both contingencies. Roger, go ahead.
I mean, I hear that point, but I think ultimately I think that budget reflects high quality services, right? I mean, as I slipped and fell on the road on my own driveway that I did not take care of, a plow truck went by to sand the roads, right? So the point is, I think we're well taken care of, even in moments. I did not expect them to be out today, but they were, and I think you would find them out today in most towns. So I think there's that quality question that is always sort of, untested, that we have this budget because this is what is presumed to be wanted in our town. And so if we want to take on that thorny question, then you could start to cut.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is when you budget for staffing, you budget for all of the taxes, you budget for all of the benefits. And so if you're not hiring all of those people, then there's several line items that get reduced. But we're also going for the maximum on contracted services for plowing. And it just doesn't make sense to me to budget for both contingencies. Marcia, go ahead.
I disagree. I think that, you know, if we had a crystal ball, it'd be great. We do know that we have a contract because we know that we don't have enough people to plow and we have to pay the contract. But if we can hire people miraculously, we should be able to hire them. And as Chris rightly pointed out, if he came to us and said, I've got people I want to hire, can I please get some more money out of the budget? You know, if it's not there, he's going to get a hard time.
Right.
So I think this is absolutely responsible. And the worst thing that happens is it becomes surplus.
Which makes me ask people for more money.
Yeah.
Priscilla, go ahead.
I think what we do is we get a contract every year for the plowing and sanding. So even if, and this year we were locked in for 65,000. So we're estimating it's 100, might be 108 next year. So if we have the contract and then we also hire the people, I think we're stuck with the contract, right? Yeah.
Well, if I may.
Yeah.
So what we did last year, or this coming year, is we had a 1-year contract. We looked at going out 3 years because we were trying to save us money. That we were going to stick with 1 year. So if we're fully staffed with highly trained, experienced operators, and we take on more of that in-house plowing, we will do that, and we'll have a lower cost on the contract that we have for next year. But again, we can't predict that. I think I would agree that what Chris is proposing here makes sense in that we have coverage for either of those contingencies and we go forward with that. That would be why we're presenting this the way we are.
Another thing, which is sort of, new. We have down here tree cutting and removal. And yet we have this note from the Emerald Ash Borer people telling us that they want $25,000 in this current fiscal year, which of course isn't budgeted. And they want $135,000 in fiscal 26. And, you know, here we have a DPW budget was thinking 12. I don't know how we balance those two things out, or maybe maybe we create a whole separate, I don't know where. So who's doing the cutting?
Chris, let me,
Go ahead.
okay. So to be clear, this is the operational budget for the Department of Public Works, and that amount is built in there for emergency clearing of trees throughout the year by DPW staff, or if they had to hire somebody, there's a major storm, there's trees in the roadways, they got to get them cleared out quickly. The Emerald Ash Borer has a designated fund. And to me, that would be what we would fund in order to kind of capitalize their request again, without having seen that or discussed it publicly. I think we should wait till the next meeting for that one. But that in my mind would be separated out from the operations of the DPW.
And they have $12,000 in the Emerald Ash Borer Fund. So, and for future, Brennan just now getting this information from them, so there hasn't been any opportunity to work that into the budget yet. So
No, I know that.
It's fine. Okay, I just have one other comment that I noted on this budget, and that was for buildings and grounds. Health insurance went up by 117%, but wages only went up 4.8. Again, maybe this is anticipating that a second person would want the health benefits that they don't. We had someone who wasn't taking the health benefits, and now we're anticipating the next person might want them. Am I reading that correctly?
Barry, do you want to weigh in on that one? I'm not sure I know the answer.
It's a vacant position.
So I'm not sure what, I know what one person has, but the person that left, I'm not sure what they had. I think one was a family and one was
one was just a
single person. Yeah. So this would consider two family people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the unfilled position is unknown, so it was budgeted higher to cover, you know, if it was a family versus a single person, because it makes a big difference.
Okay, all right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Can I, one other question, if I may?
Sure.
So how do you how do you budget for your building, Chris, if I may? Is there a line in here that is there a line that my eye hasn't caught, or is that completely capital? Yeah, so highway garage. So repairs and so I remember this board has had several conversations about like the infrastructure, the repairs, the generator. Like we've sort of talked about, I guess, where are we on the building? Are we meeting its needs? I assume we are if it's not budgeted, but I do feel compelled to ask.
Yeah, well, thanks, Roger. This is an operation budget, so it goes year to year, and this is kind of what I estimate to do, what we need to do to just keep the building operating as is, and to tackle anything that comes up that we need to kind of address. In terms of longer term, bigger issues, you'll see that in the capital budget, which will reflect kind of what we want to start preparing ourselves for in terms of getting an architect engineer on board to deal with an external structure and widening the front doors and things like that. But that's a sort of a plan and a preparation thing we have to think about. So
okay, that's great.
Okay, I'm just fascinated that maybe there's a reason that I'm just not seeing that for the highway garage itself, the electricity, the propane, and the telephone are all down a whole lot. I mean, what happened? Where do we think
better accounting by Barry?
Yes, better accounting, because
interesting.
We found over the years that some of these things were kind of convoluted, and so we were able to peel them apart a little better and get more close to what reflected numbers. So
it's how the total bill is allocated across all the departments.
Okay.
So they're allocating differently now based on some research.
Thank you.
I think that covers the DPW budget. All the questions, right? Any further questions? All right.
So I will ask again. So we are, as a board, ready to move forward with the DPW budget as it has been presented.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then we're looking at the capital budget, and you've all seen my questions and additional questions. So I'll ask if the board members have any questions. You good with that?
To the capital.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Can you the pretty color pages, Marsha? No, I know that. The questions that you referred to, those should be in the next packet. Yeah, but we're discussing it tonight, and I just wonder why we're starting with an FY22 ending balance, and we don't have anything for FY23, and then we jumped to FY24, and then we can't figure out how we got to the ending balance for FY24. It's all magic.
So Barry has her hand up, and I'm quite sure it's not magic.
Okay. Barry, go ahead.
Thank you, Marcia, for taking on sharing the document.
Pleasure.
So when I first sent the memo to the board, one of the questions was, is everyone in agreement that the capital budget that was worked with, that Joyce created last year, were we all good to continue with that? So the focus really has not been on the document she created and keeping a running tally. For the purposes of the budget, it was to look at what was set for 2026. And so those, that's why it looks this way, because it's quite wide. So we just, wanted to show a few range of years, but really the focus is the numbers that were in that budget for 2026. Right. And the reason that these are here is because these, I don't know, what is there, 5 of them, we're asking for more money than what was in that original budget. So this
I
isn't
see.
a running tally of
Okay.
where that fund stands. I mean, the fund balance report would tell you what was in that fund at this current moment. And fund balance reports could be run, in greater detail to show expenditures. But this is really just focusing on the plan that was created and continuing with that plan.
Okay.
I'm struggling to follow the numbers though, across the page.
Yeah, I wouldn't even try to, you're not going to be able to follow the numbers across the page because the focus is on the 2026.
So,
Then why
okay.
didn't we just have 2026 and not confuse me?
So so my comment is, I asked Brennan this question too. So like my thinking on this issue, just so you know where I'm heading, is we have an approved capital plan from last year, right? That presumably has people's buy-in. This is everything through that is more than what was projected in that document. So these, through a budget process this year, these are increases. And so my thinking is these increases, which seem reasonable after more planning, should just be surplus, right? And you make a motion accordingly to say that. So you're signaling to your public, like we reaffirm the capital plan that has been adopted, and we modify it with this amount of money from the fiscal year surplus, and we move on, and we're clear and transparent in in our thinking. So I agree that I can't read this document and like it, but I understand the intention, and it's a sound plan.
So if I may, so I think the big picture here is that the capital budget that is being presented is a flat budget at the moment.
Right.
You go down to the final page,
Right.
we are where we were last year. We have had things that have gone up and we have things that have gone down in this current year that we're planning for. And those are all illustrated here in the slides that Barry has presented. So that was, I guess, our intention was to work through these because we thought there would probably be questions about what has gone up that people would want to have answered. And then the final, right there. This is really the final tally of our capital budget. We're looking at a slight decrease even from where we were last year.
Okay. So what I just said was wrong then, Brennan.
Well, you were using the word surplus and I was confused as to what you were talking about there. So
so this is the same, this projections are the same as before. At the bottom line is the same.
Well, I think what I was trying to explain is there are other things here that we have not talked about yet, like the Emerald Act or fund, if that was going to be enhanced. And we have down at the very bottom of this page, we have the other article, which was the FEMA grant match that we would want to discuss. So again, if we want to go through, and I think we probably should just do this now tonight while we're thinking about it and in the room, is work through. People could ask questions. The PD's gone up a little bit for what we had planned for from last year to what we want to do this year. And so is the DPW. We have both those department heads here to talk about that. And then again, we're going to have another meeting, at least one, and we can talk more about this at the December 11th. Does that make sense to people? Does this make sense now that that's been explained?
Right. We didn't understand what
the presentation was
conveyed.
Okay. So again, Marcia, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up to, again, if people are
How far do you want to go?
are willing to the first color page.
Oh,
We could just hopefully work through these fairly quickly and ask any questions that there are. And then the bottom line, as I said, is we are actually below where we had budgeted for capital last year.
and these are the only departments that are asking for reserve funds.
No, these are changes that have increased from what they were last year in the plan, which we are looking at budgeting for fiscal year, the next fiscal year.
So in order to make it flat, did something else was.
Yep.
So this
Something
went
from
up, but
down.
then something else was taken away.
Correct.
Tennis courts
through the
went
chart,
from 75,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
Goes up and down.
The final page has kind of the best tally, what's gone up and what's gone down.
So is that, so my question to you then, I'm sorry, and I'll step back after this, Pam, is that good? Is that what we should be doing? Or is that, okay.
So this is based on our department head's hard work, right? We all sat down, we looked at operations, we looked at capital. This is what we are proposing for the plan for this coming year. I guess, is it right or wrong? I don't know. And this is the best work that we've been able to do to present to the board.
But we're not taking from something in order to advance the other goal is my question.
No, because these have been, again, vetted by the department heads and come up with this amount of money that might have been budgeted last year is not going to be budgeted for the coming year.
Why don't we say less fund 12 and less fund 45? We are going to fund $5,000 for the town clerk's record restoration and 40,000 for the reappraisal fund, right?
This is just for the accounting of how this is produced on the spreadsheet.
So really, this 1,008,975 needs to be increased by 45,000 because that 45,000 is being requested for reserve funds.
Yeah, Barry, do you want to weigh in on your spreadsheet?
We were isolating capital.
Yeah.
So 12 and 45 historically have been budgeted the same amount right along. So we're trying to isolate the capital components.
Yeah, that's a nuance that's an accounting nuance, but for us, it's a reserve fund request. And
if I may, what we're talking about today is the capital, right? So I think this is accurate in that these funds that are being shown here have the capital budget for the town. And then there are other designated funds that are non-capital that we would look at as well. And for right now, this is, again, Barry's effort to pull together operational separately, capital separately for this meeting.
so is this saying that we're going to put another $150,000 into Fund 54 for culverts and 10,000 into the roadway and pedestrian safety? Is that,
yes?
Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like basically what's happened is we are not funding tennis courts. We're not funding tennis courts in order to make up for all of these increases in other areas. Is that safe to say?
That was not intentional, no.
Roger, there was a request for us to put more money in last year because of some matching grant fund that we had to come up with the matching funds. But now we're going back to the annual maintenance amount that is needed for the tennis courts. That's my recollection of what was done last year.
Okay, I don't understand what's being demonstrated to us. I'll just say that. I don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm a smart person.
Can we go back to the top? Barry, maybe you could call, or Pam, you could call him Barry. She might be able to.
Okay, so we're talking about Fund 46, the generator fund. The other thing that was kind of hard to follow was that these explanation in the middle were kind of truncated. So it was hard to really understand. But we're on Fund 46, generator funds. Barry, do you want to give us your explanation of this fund?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that the funds that you're looking at are the funds where the department heads in the budget process for fiscal year 26 asked for more money than what was in the capital budget plan. So that's why they're being brought to your attention. Because everyone agreed, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings ago, that the capital budget plan that had been created, that everyone was happy with that and we could follow that. However, these are diversions from that because the department heads are asking for more money. So that's why we're bringing these to your attention. If you look at the overall comparison of the capital budget for fiscal year 26 requests over fiscal year 25, there's hardly any difference, but there's a difference in these particular funds. They're asking for more money than what was in the plan. So that's all this is trying to demonstrate.
Okay, so I see fiscal year 26, $10,000, but if I look at the summary sheet at the end, the generator fund is looking for $30,000, which is not reflected here on this spreadsheet with the colors. So that's really $30,000 that's being requested for that, not 10.
That's what it says in the line underneath the little green box.
What's the 60,000?
That's the estimated cost of replacing the generator here at Tracy Hall. So it says right at the bottom line, may need replacement in a few years, generator at Norwich Town Office.
But it might be more, is what it says. Anticipated to be greater than that.
Could we have Barry just walk us through this?
Like the colored parts.
Yeah.
The color parts don't make any sense.
Well, that's why I think maybe Barry could help us.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
So while these particular line items are different than they were presented last year, the ones that are the color chart, ultimately the bottom line of the capital expenses this year are less than what they were last year. But they're not as low as they were projected the overall, right?
Correct.
Okay, so with that said, I am so more than good. Like this is like, this is so fine. Like I whoa.
Agreed. So it's just allocating the money differently.
Yes. Shuffling around.
It's about the same amount of money, it's just going into different pots because of the changes that have been projected.
This is just being transparent, so the board.
Yes.
I think we should move on.
Check, move on.
This is great work.
Okay.
This is great work.
Thank you. Thank you to Barry and our department heads who spent a lot of time on this, actually.
Thank you, Barry.
Yes, it's great.
So I would like to talk about one more thing here.
Okay.
All right. I think we need to go down a little further.
Down further? Oh, down further.
Yeah, so this is the other monetary considerations. And I mentioned in, I think, 2 meetings ago that there were a couple different things here that we want to plan for. Okay. The one we're talking about tonight is this matching funds for the FEMA grants that we're anticipating in fiscal year 26.
And that was the culverts.
Hemlock Road and the culverts. Yeah. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, we got really good news that our required match is a whole lot less than what we were thinking it was going to be. We're now looking at basically $52,000 that's going to leverage, I don't know, $2.6 million. So a good deal for the town. We have this operational performance and development fund that is in its purpose, meeting grant match requirements as needed. And I think that has $87,000 in it right now. So the suggestion would be that we plan to take that $52,000 out of that fund. My suggestion is we are going to use that fund again, and we want to keep it capitalized roughly at that $87,000. So we should probably replace that $52,000 that we're going to take out in this year. And we could do that in 2 ways. We could do that with $50,000 going right back into it this year, which is going to slightly increase us from being a flat capital budget to a 2.4 increase.
I have a question.
Sure.
We have $41,751.51 in a climate emergency fund that was established, 2020, 2018, 2019? We put $40,000 in there and it's earned some interest. What are we hanging on to that money for? If this is not a climate emergency.
Well, this is a
issue
match of a grant.
But it's Hemlock Road. It was a climate emergency.
I would have to look at the purpose that was established when that fund was created.
There was no purpose identified other than we should start setting some money aside for climate emergencies. Mary?
I do think that Brendan has a pertinent point though, that there is a specific requirement to match a grant from the operational development and performance. So we should take that seriously, I think.
So we looked at this, we looked at all of them. We said, where could we pull that? What is the most applicable fund that was established in that Fund 51?
Yeah, and that one was for grant matching funds. I remember that. But my question is, we have $40,000, 41,000 and change sitting there. What are we doing with that? If we have expenses that are related to climate emergencies, when are we going to start tapping that reserve fund to cover some of those expenses?
You probably won't have to wait long.
Yeah, I was going to say the way our summers have been going, I don't know. You could move money from anywhere. I mean, honestly, this was our proposal. If the board feels like Fund 51 is not the right place to pull money from,
or maybe some from 48 and some from 51.
Well,
So
you want to do it?
How
the board wants to do it?
Yes.
About that. Because there's four
Yes.
people that might not agree with that.
I would go with 51 because it matches the purpose, and I would go with 50,000 added in 26, resulting in a 4.84 increase over last year, because I think we are going to have more of these things and we need to be prepared.
Mary?
I just agree with what Marcia said. Let's get caught up.
Well, the other thing is we need to look at what the surplus might be when we get the audit and how we might apply the surplus to some of these things too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as we discussed, probably not this one, because this one we want to have ready cash, ready to go, so we know that's there. It's not a discretionary, well, if the voters chose not to approve it,
Right.
we would go forward. The other piece of this is, well, again, let's finish the capital piece and then I have one more thing to say about it. So,
Any other comments or questions? Should we hold?
I mean, I'll just add that I agree with Marcia and Mary, so thus it's done.
Okay.
and I will just add, and I think we have a majority there, but we also now have a planning director, and that will mean that we may have some capacity to start going after some of these other grants and leveraging outside funds, and we really haven't been able to do that over the last 2 years. So I think keeping that fund fully stocked with grant match is going to long-term benefit the town.
Okay, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, so the other piece of this, and this isn't capital budget, but this is going to be related, and that might be worth bringing up now just to think about. So we're also going to have reimbursement requirements for the work that's going to get done for those two projects, and I have confirmed. Chris has confirmed with the state that these are reimbursed expenses, which means that we're going to have to go through a state process. The state gets the FEMA obligated funds, doles it out to the towns as it's expended, but it's not like a 2-minute turnaround. It's not, there's going to be weeks, potentially months based on volume that we're going to need to have some ready cash. So Barry and I, in consideration of this, thought, and Chris as well, thought that we currently have, I think it's over $2 million that have been invested into the CDs, which we did last fall. Cheryl brought that to the board and was approved. I think that we should divest some of that funding, and it might be an even $1 million. I think seems like a reasonable amount to have in a more liquid form so that we could pay for the reimbursements. And then we could obviously accounting wise track the monies that are there, what goes out, what gets reimbursed back again. We're not losing money in the process. It's all getting reimbursed, but it allows us the flexibility to pay invoices on time.
And this is what I was saying at an earlier meeting, is that we pay up front and then we apply to get reimbursed.
That's been confirmed. Yeah.
It's always been the way it works.
So that's nothing we have to do tonight, but if people are kind of nodding that makes some sense.
I will ask when these CDs come up for renewal. I think it's December, but
I think they just did, and then they re-up for another 3 months automatically. So we're not looking at having to tap this for another 6 months, maybe further out. But
the treasurer's back in town. I will ask when the CD comes up for renewal. Marcia, you had a question? Or?
No, I just wanted to know the timing and whether that was going to end.
I think it's December if I remember right, but I'd have to look back. Okay. Any other comments on item number 9, or can we move on to 10?
Let's move on to 10.
Okay, let's do that.
Chief Romeo, thanks for your patience in the back room there, and you can go home and please drive safely. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I see roads and lots of fog, so be careful.
Chris Kaufman, same to you with the driving.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good night.
Good night.
Another service needs to split out the clock, guys.
Oh,
Great.
Oh, thanks for telling us that.
I know, that's not what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go pretty quick then. Really.
Let's finish by 9:30. We've got 10 minutes.
Okay.
We got some warrant articles.
I'll skip through these again, kind of as needed. As the chief, I'll stop at the police department. As the chief mentioned, we actually have a number of candidates that are kind of in various stages of an interview process right now, which is something we have not had in my tenure. So this is wonderful, and we're hoping to find somebody interested in Norwich that we're interested in making an offer to, and stay tuned here shortly. DPW, a couple things to talk about. Again, Chris and I continue to work on these easement deeds for the FEMA culverts. These have been challenging and time consuming, and I'll leave it at that. We're still working on them. We have potentially identified a candidate for the building and grounds technician position. Made a conditional offer, and that's been accepted, and we're right now going through the kind of background investigation. And
I think I saw that in the warrant article. Something that I figured, well, when we get to it.
You might have.
Look, that's what I thought it might be.
So anyway, just a heads up that we are hoping to have a confirmed candidate there here in the
Stop sharing.
near term. Yeah, you can stop sharing. Yeah.
I was enjoying that scrolling though. Don't worry. I can look at my own. I can look at my own.
You're mesmerized. Dizzy.
And then the other thing that I want to talk about briefly here, and this came in Friday afternoon, so it didn't make it onto the written report, but we were funded for another Better Roads grant, and that is basically going to allow us to do a phase 2 of a road erosion inventory that's conducted by Two Rivers. So I did a little background, and this was actually done back in 2018-19 for the first round. So we received funding, and we are going forward with Two Rivers. I administratively executed an agreement with them to do the work. This is almost 80% grant funded. So again, this comes through the V-Trans to allow towns to do road inventories on their class 2, 3, and 4 roadways. And that allows us to go after grants in the future.
Are they gravel-based roads?
2, 3, and 4. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't matter what they are made of, they're inventoried. So basically, 12 $12,000 grant, $3,000 match from the town, and this will begin probably, they are anticipating March to April and be completed by July. So I was thinking, I've signed this and executed it with Peter Gregory. I'll put that into the next board packet so people have a chance to look at it. But this is kind of a no-brainer that we've done in the past and are, again, lucky enough to have the state supporting us in this.
Great.
Okay. Moving down to my office, we talked about Moore Lane Bridge. The personnel policy update, we're currently collecting the signed signatures from staff and elected officials. Not all of those have been submitted yet, but most have. The Tracy Hall and the energy audit, I will announce the bad news that we did not receive any funding through that implementation grant that we had thrown our hat into the ring without a whole lot of optimism that Norwich was going to be a funded town, and we were not. I am expecting at some point here before the end of the year to have the Studio Nexus report. Again, we're kind of deep into the budget, so I don't know that we'll focus on that until 2025, but I've been told that is coming. I continue to have discussions with the fire district about the hydrant rental fee / fire protection cost of the town. That is something I don't think we're going to get through here in the budgeting season. So we've kind of left the budget as it was for last year with a increase of 6%. And we're still not kind of in agreement as to what the final number is going to be there. I was also able to create an MOU with the Riverside Veterinarian Clinic. That has gone back to them for.
Is that Christine Fidel?
Yeah.
It's River Road.
River Road.
What did I call it?
Riverside. Yeah.
No, sorry.
It's okay. We're all tired.
You sure it's not Riverside?
It's River Road.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Riverside is in Lebanon.
Oh, when I lived in Lebanon. So the veterinarian clinic. I'll have to check and make sure I put that correctly in my MOU.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's back in their court right now, and I'm going to get that executed. We can put that into a future packet too, so everybody can see it. Another kind of unfortunate situation. We are currently in a billing dispute with Windstream Enterprises, and you're all familiar with this story where we suddenly received a $3,000 upcharge, and we have been sent to collections. I haven't received anything formally from a collections agency, but I've had an initial conversation with one of the gentlemen there. I've told them our position is this is unacceptable, that we've been billed. We canceled it as soon as we could, and we don't believe we owe them any back fees here, but that's ongoing. I actually have sent a letter to the state attorney general's office kind of explaining our position and wondering if there's any support that they could provide the town. So
Yeah, certainly they should be aware of companies jacking up their prices like that.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. And then just kind of on the HR side, we're in our open enrollment for our healthcare for next year. And those are, I think we received most of those back last week. And as we've just discussed, our budget process is well underway. So we have two meetings into 2 more to go, hopefully. And I hope people are feeling that we're providing good information so far.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it. That was.
Wait.
All right.
Sorry. One more thing.
So,
We have a motion from Priscilla.
Okay.
Solicitation for open positions continues. I'm hoping that's like for, I mean, I refuse to do it, but I'm grateful for somebody to take the notes at the select board meeting.
I was thinking more of the police and the DPW.
Those are more important.
I mean, as long as you guys are willing to do it, I mean, I
If there's some magic wand, you know.
Let's talk about that at
Another time, right?
No, we have
we had 3 minutes. We want to finish up.
solicitations.
okay, moving on to number 11. The only correspondence in this packet was from Chris Clement Regarding request for public records under the Public Records Act and the, alleged open meeting violation complaint that she filed with the board. So that was it for correspondence.
Can I move to accept all correspondence then, please?
All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm not ready. Sorry, Marcia.
Exciting.
Was that your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. Mary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Yes, unanimous.
Well,
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to the draft minutes for November 13 of 2024. Does anyone have any comments or questions or suggested edits? Priscilla?
On page 2, at the very bottom, item 10, it says the town, about the Hemlock Road culverts expense, the town should expect to pay 2.3%? Is that really what the percent? I thought FEMA was gonna pay 90, the state was gonna pay 5, we were gonna pay 5. So why, how do you get to
No,
2.3?
and it's lower now.
It's lower.
Yeah.
Awesome.
91, and then, yeah, we're paying 2%. I
2. It says 2.3, okay,
go with that.
okay, yes, thank you.
All right. I don't see any other comments or questions, so I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the November 13th, 2024 minutes.
Okay, is there a 2nd?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Losing my voice here.
Mary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I mean, yes, unanimous. Okay. All right, moving on to the AP warrants. We have 3 of them tonight.
Okay,
So Priscilla?
on the first one there, on the second page, Burgess Laws and Prevention says investigation services. It's $2,220. I'm assuming that's the background check, yeah, that we're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Okay, all right, any other questions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve AP warrant 1202 in the amount of $109,972.51 to be paid from the general fund.
And I will second that.
All right. Mary, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right, moving on to the next warrant.
It's a cute little one. Should I move that one?
Sure.
I move to approve AP warrant number 1201 in the amount of $124.66 to be paid from the general fund.
Second.
Okay. All right, Mary, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Unanimous. Okay. And then the last warrant.
Love the name Handcuff Warehouse, but.
Should I move that one?
Yeah, it's accessories for the.
I know.
For the cruisers. All right, go ahead, Mary.
I move to approve AP warrant number 1203 in the amount of $856.91 to be paid from fund number 11, Police Cruiser Fund.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. All right, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, unanimous. Okay. All right, I've signed all of these. I will pass them down. Okay.
Yes.
And
Two 1-pagers.
oh, we've got 2 of the second one. For some
The
reason,
small one?
the 124.
Yeah, 2 of
There's
them?
actually 2 copies of it. I don't know why. I
Oh,
signed both.
okay, that's a little weird.
All right, then we have some department head reports in here. And the finance report is here for the 4th period. I would just like to say that I found the first part of this report very informative, but the second part, which is the, about the activity in the reserve funds, was a little confusing and not very informative. And then the last page was the summary report for all of the reserve funds, which is very informative. We have a report from the police chief, we have a report from the fire chief, we have a report from rec department, and from our shared energy coordinator. Keith, is that any of this? Comments?
So I just want to say that I have noticed, and I appreciate that the fire department's report seems to have moved more of a focus on their operations and less as sort of important information to know about fire safety, right? So, and I like that personally. So thank you. If my feedback was received, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and their numbers from the Halloween open house was impressive. Okay, that is everything for the department reports. Let me just double check my. Okay, that was the last thing. So we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Well, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll submit. Okay. Mary, how do you vote? Yes. Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I am a yes, and we are adjourned at 9:34 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.
Take care.
Good night.